Hi, I'm Stefan Eeskens. I'm an Azure specialist and a Microsoft MVP. I have a particular interest for artificial intelligence. I have been involved in several AI-related real-world projects in the past 3 years. Therefore, I want to share some lessons learned and of course some technical bits with the community. Please follow me on Twitter, as I'll keep sharing extra bits and I'll be announcing the upcoming of new episodes. This course is made of multiple episodes, and some of them might not be recorded yet by the time you watch the current episode. The course explains some fundamental AI concepts and will slowly increase in complexity with real-world examples and concrete business scenarios that could be relevant to your enterprise. You will learn how to create and consume Azure Cognitive Services, as well as how to educate more advanced services and specialize them to fit your specific needs. No technical prerequisite is necessary, as I will try to be as exhaustive as possible in my explanations. However, the course is primarily intended to developers, but part of it is accessible to non-developers as well. In the first 3 episodes, we have been building a minimal chatbot, and we created the Luis app that fulfills various purposes. Now that you got familiar with intents, entities, active learning and Luis training, it is time to implement the actual actions triggered by these intents. In this episode, we see how to take advantage of QnA Maker to handle the casual chat and IT knowledge base functionalities our chatbot has to deal with. I will also highlight the strengths and current limitations of QnA Maker. QnA Maker is very convenient to handle FAQ scenarios and knowledge bases. After all, knowledge base is supposed to find answers to people's questions. It is somehow a broad FAQ. That's why it makes sense to use QnA Maker for such purposes. QnA Maker makes use of NLP and machine learning behind the scenes, but this underlying complexity is well hidden so that QnA Maker users don't need to worry about that. Similarly to Luis, QnA Maker also comes with an active learning feature, which gives the app contributors the possibility to adjust its understanding at any point in time. In this demo, I'm going to show you how to create a Q&A, consume a Q&A from a chatbot. At the time of recording, there is no pricing plan associated to QnA Maker, so there is no need to create a cognitive service as we did for Luis and our Text Analytics API in the previous episodes. Beware that this comes with a severe limitation, as the number of calls per minute with the default subscription key is limited to 10, which is very low and should be discouraged for production use unless your audience is very limited. QnA Maker is anyway still in preview, so going to production with it heavily depends on your risk appetite. To create a Q&A, I simply navigate to QnAMaker.ai to land on the QnA Maker management portal, and I sign in with my Microsoft account. I will start with the creation of a casual chat Q&A. The goal here is to define the answers the chatbot has to send to end users whenever they start a day-to-day conversation. So I simply click Create New Service, and I give it a name. As you can see, it is possible to absorb an existing online FAQ or to provide a file that contains the question and answer pairs. Since I will only define a few entries, I'm opting for the manual creation. I'm then brought to the service where a default question-answer pair has been created for me. I'm gonna add a few other pairs to cover my casual chat intent defined in Luis. Once done, I click on Save and Retrain to make sure my changes are taken into account. Now I can already use the built-in UI to test my service. As you can see, on the left-hand side, you can find which answers were found, and you can adjust the order if necessary should you have multiple answers. On the right-hand side, I can add similar questions to the question I'm testing, which will cause QnA Maker to reply with the same answer in the future whenever this alternate question is asked. Now that I'm happy with my Q&A, it's time to train and publish it. Once published, QnA Maker shows a code sample that can be used to consume the service with the consumption key. I have created the IT question Q&A the same way I did for the casual chat one. It contains 3 questions that are very close to each other, especially the 2 first ones. Most of the times when asking a question to QnA Maker, you get a single answer in return, but it's not always the case, as I will show you in a minute. Okay, I have published the IT question Q&A, as I did for the casual chat one, and I'm going to show you how to consume it with Fiddler first. So you have to copy and paste the URL from the code sample into the Composer tab of Fiddler and switch operation to a post one. Now I copy and paste the request headers containing the subscription keys and the body containing the question I want to ask to QnA Maker. I'm going to purposely send an ambiguous question to show you how you can take advantage of such situation in the chatbot, since ambiguous questions will always be asked by end users sooner or later. My question is incomplete as I ask what is the difference between. And what QnA Maker does in such situation is sending multiple potential matches. In the context of a chatbot, you could take the first one, meaning the one QnA Maker thinks is the closest match, but you can also add a did you mean functionality with the remaining questions. Okay, we've seen how to consume the service with Fiddler. It's basically not more complicated to consume it from within the chatbot. I have created a method that is calling the QnA Maker. It has two arguments, the user input and the QnA identifier, which is in this case either the casual chat, either the IT question QnA. I then call QnA Maker with the subscription key and the transmitted QnA identifier. I'm converting QnA Maker's answers into a .NET object. At last, I perform a small sanity check that converts escaped single quotes into single quotes to make sure we don't show weird characters to our end users. Remember that the response from QnA Maker is in JSON format, hence the escape of the single quotes. I have added the call to this method in the Lewis dialog we created in the previous episode, in both the casual chat and the IT question intents. The answer can trigger three possibilities. QnA Maker didn't find any match. In this case, I simply tell the user that I don't understand. QnA Maker found a single match. In this case, I simply display the returned answer. QnA Maker found multiple potential matches. In this case, I show the default answer and I convert the alternate questions into a list of buttons for the did you mean functionality. Note that for sake of simplicity and brevity, I didn't add exception handling in this code. Let's see this in action. As we did in episode 3, we'll simply run the project locally and test the chatbot with the bot emulator. I simply start with a basic input which triggers casual chat intent defined in Lewis, which itself causes a call to the casual chat QnA Maker. We can see the answer from QnA Maker. Now, as we did with Fiddler, I'm going to ask an ambiguous question. This will cause the IT question intent to kick off in Lewis and will trigger a call to the IT question QnA. Fair enough, I get multiple possible matching questions, so I simply return the default answer and the other questions as a list of buttons. Here comes a real word tip. A rule of thumb is you don't control what you don't measure. So it's important to take metrics about the quality of both QnA Maker and Lewis. As we saw in the previous episode, Lewis ships with an API that allows you to download all the queries that are sent to a particular app endpoint. You can take advantage of this by writing a small console program that gets all these queries from Lewis and sends them to QnA Maker automatically. You can then consolidate everything into a single file that can be accessed manually by a domain expert. And you can repeat this operation over time. Okay, let's wrap it up. We saw how easy it is to create Q&As and to consume them via the QnA Maker API. We've also seen that for the time being, Microsoft comes with the preview only, so there is no pricing plan associated with QnA Maker. I told you that I would highlight some strengths and weaknesses of QnA Maker. I guess that its main strength is its ease of use and the great capability to find matches. One weakness is the fact that there is no way to give a weight to specific words. I'm thinking of entities that you capture in Lewis. If somehow these important values could be considered more important by QnA Maker in its matching calculations, it would certainly be more meaningful for our business. Feel free to follow me on Twitter and to share your thoughts using the rating and comment functionalities.